It might feel like the school holidays have only just begun, but it's not going to be long before the kids are back in the classroom. And obviously with that comes a huge stress on family finances as school books, clothes, kits, you name it. We need to get more of that to get the kids ready for the rest of the school year. Joining me to talk about this and other ways that you can get your kids financially ready as well is our young people and money expert, Kirsty. Hello, Kirsty.
Hello, Andy.
And we're going to take you through some of the things that you need to think about to get ready for this school year and the future. So Kirsty, first of all, what are some of the things that parents need to be thinking about before the kids are back in the classroom?
Well, as you've said already, there's absolutely lots to think about. Things like school uniform, school kit, shoes. There will have been that growth spurt over the summer holidays. Then there's the practical things like stationery, books, pens and pencils. And finally, there are those things that you haven't really had to think about, like going to and from school, like after school clubs, like school lunches.
It all kind of adds up quite quickly, doesn't it, when you think about it like that? And there's ongoing costs throughout the year, not just that first day back. Obviously, we're a few weeks ahead now, but when's the best time for them to kind of parents to really start getting this ready and thinking about it?
Well, as soon as possible. Some of the best advice that we get from parents of what's worked for them is that they start doing it now and start to figure out what are those costs that they need to spend, when do they need to do it, and can they start buying some of those things now?
Is there a kind of a typical amount that most parents are spending on these things that they kind of need to make sure they've got around right now to cover those at first costs?
Now, it is going to depend on what sort of school that your child goes to, what their school uniform policy is. However, a report last year by Equifax found that on average, the typical family spends about £300 on back to school costs a year, which is an awful lot. Now, that's not a guidance of you have to spend £300 at all. You need to figure out what your child needs and working out a budget that you're able to afford.
Now, obviously, that £300, it could be more. Some of these things that schools require can be even more expensive, particularly the technology that is sometimes required for children. Of course, it could be a lot less, but whatever your budget, it still could be a bit of a stretch. Are there ways that parents who find that figure a bit too much, particularly if they're trying to find it right now with just a few weeks to go, with the expense of the summer holidays already being quite high, what ways can they cut back and get things for less but still have what's needed to be in the school bag on day one?
Well, I would say look out for offers now. It helps if you look out for offers throughout the year, but there will be a lot going on in the run up to school starting, particularly for shoes, which can be some of parents' biggest expenses. Some schools, they also offer second-hand clothes sales, and some local communities do that as well. And if you have children of different ages that go to the same school, try and hold on to the uniform that they have so that in future years you've got the uniform to hand.
I think something that anyone with kids will probably recognise is the fact that it's not just this list of things that the school requires, but the kids themselves have a lot of kind of demands. There's a lot of pressure for having certain, whether it's fashion items, whether it's technology items. How is it best for a parent to kind of deal with that if they don't have the money for it?
Absolutely, there are a lot of demands and the cost of those demands is increasing every day, it seems. What I would say is think about what you, your family really needs and prioritise that first rather than what are all the sorts of things that you'd want if you could have.
Yeah, and I guess there might be disappointment with the kids if they haven't got the latest thing, but it's much better they have that disappointment than potentially you going into debt as a parent to get those things, because that can have obviously huge effects further down the line, can't it?
Exactly, and we do see some families that do get themselves into debt because of this, and we really don't want to see that at all. So if you feel like you're struggling with the costs of going back to school, of your kids going back to school, that's the point where you need to start and look and see if you can take action to address that.
Now, obviously the thing about kids is, and I'm sure you're telling me more about details in a second, but this is the time to get them thinking about money as well, isn't it? When people are at school, that's the best time for them to learn things. So is there a way that this back to school costs, the way of sort of, the things you can and things you can't have, that this is a great time to teach some important money lessons?
Yes, it really is a great time to. And what I would say is it is never too young to start. So we've got research that shows that children start to learn about their attitudes about money and their values about money from as young as the age of 3. So have a think about what you want those attitudes and values to be and start talking to your kids about it.
So, okay, a 3-year-old's not at school yet, but what should they be thinking about in terms of money at that age? What is it just about familiarisation, or are there some bigger things, bigger concepts they need to get?
From 3, I'd say it's definitely about familiarisation. So why not have your child start to handle some of the money, not play money, actual real money, 1p's, 2p's, 5p's, 10p's, and understand what the difference is for those different coins, what you can get. But what's also important is talking to your kids about money. And people say, well, why is it important to talk to my kids about money? Surely I want to shield them from it.
Yeah.
Money is something that you innately worry about. I want to protect my child. But there's 2 reasons why I say that it's really good to. First, number 1 is when your child is a teenager, you don't want them to think that money grows on trees. Number 2 is when your child does leave the home, you don't want them to be held back by money. You don't want them to get into financial difficulties. And they are far more at risk of doing that if money has been something that they haven't really learnt about in the home, something that they haven't really seen talked about at all.
Have you got research, I guess, that proves that the kids, or people who were taught as a kid about these concepts, so it's like at age of 7 or something, where the habits are formed, and if they're good habits, then they'd be better in later life, and if they're bad habits, they might have problems later on. How does that work?
Yeah, so what we find for people who end up using our debt services is that many say that money was something they just didn't really learn about in the home at all. They didn't see mum and dad using it. It was something maybe that was a bit unsavoury. It wasn't discussed at all. And often many just had no experience of it whatsoever, and so it meant that the first time that they were making mistakes when it came to money was when the stakes were an awful lot higher. When the stakes are you get a bad credit rating, or you end up in an IVA. It's not you get in trouble with mum, with dad, and you get grounded for a period of time, or you don't have the money to get the things that you want.
And I suppose there's also the sense of at this age, the concepts are maybe a bit easier to kind of drip in and kind of see practically. Even if I guess the parent doesn't necessarily understand it themselves, they shouldn't be scared of this. They can find resources, find ways, find things that can improve their kids' knowledge, their kids' behaviours and I guess attitude to money.
And what I want parents to understand is it doesn't have to be something incredibly complex that they need to do. You don't have to know a lot to teach your kids about it, because you are the experts. You are doing this every day. It's just starting to expose it to your children in an age-appropriate way. And you will know what is most age-appropriate for them, what they will be able to understand. So a couple of things that parents could do. So for slightly younger children, thinking about going back to school, why not work with them to develop a list of everything that they think is involved in the cost of going back to school, and then also write against it, get them to write whether they think it's a want, whether they think it's a need. And I think parents will find that pretty illuminating to find out how much the kids aren't really aware of, and it's the opportunity to talk about it. And for slightly older children, thinking back to some of those things we talked about earlier, like stationery, for example, the things that are nice to have, quite small amount of money. But why not that money that you were going to spend on it? Give the budget over to them, give them the responsibility for it, and maybe set them the challenge of you go and sort your stationery out or whatever it may be, and any money left over you can keep for yourself.
Okay, so we're encouraging them to find the best deal.
Shop around, budget. Also learn the 2 important lessons. Number 1, there are choices that have to be made in relation to money, so you can't have everything that you want. And number 2, when it's gone, it's gone.
And let's hope they don't just run off and buy McDonald's with the cash instead. There are lots more tips like this for different ages, whatever you want to kind of get across, different concepts of money, over on the Money Advice Service website. If you go to moneyadviceservice.org.uk/kids, there are some fantastic tools and videos that you can work through with your children while you've still got some of the summer holidays left, and I guess as the academic year and as it goes on and as they get older. Kirsty, thank you so much, and thanks for watching.